Tonight, Amazon Prime takes over as we take a comprehensive look at the new original movie Samaritan. Then we continue our community discussion of Terminalist with Episode 5. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to The Writer Brothers, where we are going to talk about, as I said, list. I am joined tonight by ever so lovely Atos, aka John, and of course, Orion, Witch and Resin. Gentlemen, I'm going to mess with my sound filters for a second, so please take the floor.
I was just listening in.
Nope, I looked at the wrong indicator. Oh. Sorry, audience and those listening, it's going to sound a little weird, but hey, at least we have background music for cover. Yeah, so completely start over what you were saying, because I looked at the wrong. Still polishing, man. I did that intro so good. Oh well.
Hey, it's all good, man.
Mistakes give me something to work on next week.
Yeah, so The Samaritan is a movie that was originally made by MGM, and as part of the merger was gobbled up by Amazon, like our glorious Pac-Man overlord that Amazon is.
Oh, it's a hungry hippo. Let's not give it the glory of digital.
I don't know. I recognize our 8-bit om nom nom overlord. I'll give it at least 8 bits.
8-bit nom overlord that flies around in a giant penis. Seriously,
Yeah.
look at Bezos's rocket. And, hey, you know, some people say get your mind out of the gutter, and I look at that one and I'm like, this is not. You don't need to be in the gutter, okay? Every single male alive knows what that thing looks like. It's not some big secret, guys.
I mean, personally, I thought it was
Honestly,
like a great riff on the Dr. Evil rocket from the Austin Powers movies.
I think it reminds me entirely of Sacha Baron Cohen's character from The Dictator, when the nuclear physicists build the nuke with the dickhead, not the pointy one. And they say, oh, it doesn't matter, and he goes and kills them all. Or so he thought.
Hey, man.
Anyway,
All right, so
there was no flying penis in Samaritan.
Sadly. But there was
And
Sylvester
Cozy Koala
Stallone.
3. Hello from Stinker. Hello to you, Cozy Koala 3.
Good evening, Cozy Koala. Welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. So, Sly Stallone playing a retired, super-powered individual that's, you know, just the garbage collector collecting stuff. Until, you know, confirmation happens that, yeah, he is a super-powered individual. And, you know, shenanigans start ensuing, because when you're called to action, you know, it's in the 80s style action movie. When you're called to action, you know, you're gonna go to action. So let's talk about what we liked, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we're leaving general discussion up all night because
All right.
There honestly really wasn't a whole lot of dull moments for me for this movie, aside from the necessary dull moments of character building and plot progression, and I mean, that's just, there's no getting away from that, unless you watch Transformers. And so I honestly, I found this to be a very well written piece. I found that the plot progress, like I said, everything about this story I think was all there. It needed to be needed to capture my interest, which it did. The premise was really well done, basically, and that's what's great. You know, this is one of the positive byproducts of having a cape movie, is that we finally can do a cape movie without having to do a bunch of backstory, because, you know, this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we would have had, you know, Samaritan 1 and 2, and then Samaritan joins the Samaritan Justice League Avengers, and then Samaritan does, you know, X, Y, and Z, and a whole bunch of build-up. Well, we could skip all that now. Thank you, Marvel. That. And now we can just kind of start with, okay, what about a story about a hero who's retired or presumed dead? And we don't need 5 other movies for the build-up, because we've got it all right there. So,
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I like the idea of having this portrayal as a character where, you know, he's just an old man who's sick and tired of trying to go out there, and, you know, he doesn't want to save the day. He just wants to, like, relax in his cave, you know, like, or in his, you know, apartment, fixing down broken down stuff, because it's just therapeutic to work on stuff. You know, like, I kind of like that idea, right? And I love that this kid is trying desperately to drag him into action, and he's just like, why would I want to do that? I'm happy here. You know, I don't want that life. And, you know, no one's letting him off on it. I thought the bad guy was fantastic. We have a bad guy that practically worships the original bad guy to the story, which is a character called Nemesis. And in a lot of ways, his love of Nemesis really well mirrors the kid who's trying to bring Samaritan back into the limelight. They're almost kind of this perfect, you know, funhouse mirror reflection of each other. I mean, it definitely wears its 80s references on its sleeve, because Yo, man, was it just me or did the main bad guy look an awful lot like he belonged in Lost Boys?
Yeah,
Like an awful
couldn't-
lot.
I couldn't figure that out either. And then when you said that before the show, I was like, yeah, no, that's definitely it. So, I mean, it was.
Yeah, definitely vampire vibes for sure. Vampire or Viking. I feel like he's in one of the Viking shows.
He could be.
Yeah, he kind of looks. Speaking of vampires, he kind of looks like young Kiefer Sutherland from that vampire movie that I can't remember the name of.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Lost Boys.
What am I thinking of? I don't know. Anyway, either way, so that's where you met. Okay, now I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got my movies mixed up, which happens.
All good.
I think this was actually like the great question of the Sphinx. What walks on two or four legs, two legs, and then three. And I think what we saw was see the child who is gung-ho about doing good for goodness sake. You see the bad guy, the main bad guy, and he's like doing his definition of good, which means it doesn't matter who gets hurt as long as his goals and his team is taken care of. And then you have Stallone, who's the old man who's like, as long as I'm fixing things, I'm not a problem. I don't owe anybody anything, and as long as I'm not the source of destruction, I'm not part of the problem. And you see, like, I think this whole movie was the fight between those three people, the old, the middle, and the young. And the middle, I think, is the one that very often goes ignored. It is like the middle child. We always forget that there's a time where we stop asking for heroes and we start deciding that we're good enough to be our own heroes. And I think that's really what this showed us, because throughout the movie, this character is rallying for Nemesis, who he believes could be alive, but is most likely dead. Like, all the evidence supports that he's dead. And there's just that hope in a young boy's heart, and that young boy became a young man, and now that man is in charge of people, and so he's doing what he thinks his hero would have done. And I think this movie actually took the time to explain the duality of the criminal versus the citizen, and the difference truly is like, everybody knows that the citizens are getting screwed, the criminals just are screwing back. Like, citizens are getting milked, they're getting taken advantage of, and now the criminals are like, well, we're just not gonna also get milked, and if we do get milked, we're gonna get ours from somebody else. And that's the part that I feel like a lot of superhero movies, even 80s movies, really failed to highlight, was that like this movie at no point said anybody was living a good life. Like, the alone talking to the child and like mentoring this child, he is never once like, the world will be better when you make it better, Frodo. No, he's like, no, if the world was fair, we'd all get along. And that's like, to me, like, that was the really like beautiful thing in a lot of his teaching, was like, he acknowledged the dirtiness of reality, but also showed a way to higher morality despite living in the gutter, despite being a garbage man. Like, you can still make garbage pretty, you can fix things that are broken, you can be better. And I feel like this movie took everything that the 80s tried to do, reduced about 40% of the action, and then upped the storyline, upped the dialogue, and then left it like that. And I think that's what we always needed from our superhero movies. We don't need superheroes to come in and save the entire city. We need them to save one small boy, despite also losing half the city, despite also not being good enough to take care of everybody else. Because that really shows the importance of the other humans.
Yeah, this right here.
The reason the city is the best.
Yeah, everything you just said is why I love doing this show. That's probably going to be my new drinking line. But I didn't even think to make that connection. The garbage that he's restoring the trash was symbolism like that. Yeah. Oh, I see it now. That was so obvious, and it was And you're right, because the 80s movie era storytelling tropes, and you know, as much as I love Star Wars, it does get a drawback from me for being so black and white with its good guys and bad guys, because reality isn't that simple. And that's what I love about this. The message of Samaritan is that reality isn't that easy. It's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more nuanced. You know, if the bad guys were just the bad guys and the good guys were just the good guys, it would be a lot easier to sort everything out. But it's not. And that's it's amazing how the show just sets up a premise. You don't expect it or see that coming at all.
Yeah.
They just... Sorry, dude.
I was also going
go
to say, like, I absolutely love, though, that they point out, too, that, like, you know, good guys and bad guys really are just a matter of opinion, right? And what boils down to is you can have good people doing bad things and bad things being done by good people. And it's still all, you know, at the end of the day, it's what people remember that winds up putting those labels on good and bad. That I thought was an excellent lesson on people as well, right? Like, you know, we were literally watching somebody having been judged by history effectively in real time and having to deal with that continuously.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was
And we got
really...
fan mail. Fan mail from Arendi writes in, batteries not included has something similar. The person who burns down the place was not really a bad person, misguided, but not bad.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, see, that I think this is a different version of that. Not to give spoilers away or try to blur the conversation too much, but this one was a lot more, to me, it was like the movie He Never Died, which is the story of what if Cain was still a person alive today.
Yeah.
And what somebody that slips through all of history would act like. And what I really got from this version of that Cain story was more along the lines of, like, the story started out with these two children are unimaginably powerful brothers, and because of their power, the family is burned. And one brother says, I'll protect the weak even if they hate me for it. And the other brother says, I'm gonna make those people pay because they deserve it. And both of them are right. One is taking the high road without any sense of self. He's just automatically becoming an altruist, attempting to always save lives rather than take. And the other is like, no, there are people that are nefarious and they deserve to be beaten into submission. And from there, that's where the whole story of Nemesis and Samaritan is born and grows and escalates to where it starts in the movie. And that's where both of them are killed because of a trap. And in that trap, it's never really said who's...
Real quick, guys. These aren't so much spoilers that he's talking about, by the way. This is actually all given away very early in the movie to help establish the tone and the expectations for the film.
Scene.
Yeah, but I wanted to say that, so in case anyone's like trying to click away frantically, oh, spoilers! No, we're not actually going to give any major spoilers away. We are just sticking to the overall content as far as what the film meant for us, and of course sharing our opinions about it. We want you guys. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take the time real quick, John. Sorry to do this, but I do want to say, we give this. I'll save my rating afterwards, but we want you guys to watch this
superhero movie I've seen in the last 3 years.
Totally,
and it has
agree.
has nothing carrying it. Nothing aside from the fact that Sylvester Stallone's in it. Like, I would watch it just for that, because part of me always thinks he's gonna bomb and just be the worst. And every movie I've ever seen, I've only been disappointed in everybody else around him. Like, I love the Italian Stallion. I think he is just one of the greatest, he's what Arnold Schwarzenegger thinks he is. Arnold Schwarzenegger running around like, I'm super muscly, I did this, I did it all by myself. And then Rocky is like, literally, I filmed the first movie on my bike.
Yep.
And that's who Sylvester Stallone is. And not to mention the Italian Stallion, from porn to this, that is a hero's march if I ever heard one.
You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Dude, they always
this
say
is
you can't.
yeah, this is one of those movies that, although it went right to streaming, it should have gone into the theaters. It really should have, because this was worthy of going to get that big thing of popcorn, going through the sticky floor, like whatever. If I had gone to see this in a theater, I would not have been disappointed at all.
Also, Randy writes
But
in
I
real
would
quick.
acknowledge.
Randy writes
go
in,
for it.
personally, I don't care about spoilers. Thank you for your reasonability. We do. Good to know. We'll invite you to the spoil streams. And that's, I'll just reiterate real quick. Our spoiler policy is very fluid. Depending on what we're talking about, depending on what the content is, we may talk heavily about spoilers, and if we hate it, it's spoil city. But if we like something and we want you guys to experience it as best as we did, that's when we will kind of hold the brakes, and we want you. And yes, we're not offended by. We try not to be super offended here at TWB, but we do want you guys to have the opportunity to get that experience of enjoying the twist for the first time. And so, if we like the product, of course. Otherwise, we will definitely spoil stuff. We'll alert people. We'll be like, no, we're talking spoilers. This show sucks. Or maybe there's a good justified reason in a very rare instance.
Yeah, I think in the instance, like, why we're being so standoffish on this one is the twist, the story, the experience, like, every piece of it is actually fun.
Yeah.
At no point do you feel like you're wasting your time. And so that's why we don't want to spoil it, is we don't want you to go through it going, oh, I kind of already know what's going to happen. Because, it is a
this one unfolds
take
like
on the hero's journey.
Yeah, this one unfolds like this beautiful little origami flower, and we don't want to ruin that unfolding for you.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you watch it, you'll understand, and that's why we're discussing, are promoting it. This is one of those ones that's like 100% on our definitely watch list.
Yeah.
Because, and this goes back to my comment against Corey in terms of the streaming thing. Like, I understand why they had to go directly to streaming, because when you're competing with all the trash superheroes that have started coming out, like, it's a hard sell to say that Stallone is going to be the one to kill it.
Yeah, fair enough.
At his age.
Fair enough.
And that's my only rebuttal, is like, if the marketing team was debating it, you kind of made the right choice, because I can see how hard that would be to sell. That being said, re-release in the theaters 6 months from now, and I will
go see this in the theater if they put it out in the theater. Absolutely. So yes, Amazon, whoever's listening, theaters, want my money, put it on the theater. I'll go see it, and I will tell other people, go to the theater and experience this, because it's.
Bro, if that's the new model for films going to theaters, I support that 100%.
Yeah, let us decide what I want to watch on the big
screen. In the theaters.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like the idea of like going to the theaters and risking it anymore.
I don't either.
So if I can watch it once on my standard television audio, sometimes during the day when the sun's cutting half the screen out, and I enjoy it, then I will pay the $10-15 to go see it in a comfy chair with my popcorn, listening to that Dolby XDS, all that sound. I love it. But also,
21
I don't want to
theater with the beverages.
Oh hell yeah, that's right. Definitely
That's what this one needs, man. Like straight up, I would buy merch from this movie. Like I really would.
No,
I would buy the
superhero
Samaritan
costumes?
T-shirt.
Bro, I was so about their costumes. Like, that actually looked like a customized rig, like that you would wear in the military, but this one was more custom. Like, he had shoulder pads that were tied under the shoulders, not just slapped on there magically.
Yep.
Like,
and they weren't like
he had a
huge
chest
shoulder
plate
pads
that was
either, right? Like,
no, everything was like as compact as his body would allow, which is saying a lot for Stallone, because he's not a compact person, but he still wore a form-fitting uniform that also wasn't hockey pads.
Yeah.
But kind of felt pretty close. Like, this is that line from Batman, I'm not wearing hockey pads, where like Stallone would shoot back, I'm not here, and Batman have to step back for a second.
You cut out again. Say that again.
I was saying this is that line from Batman where is it,
I'm not wearing hockey pads. Yeah.
And I really feel like Stallone would be like, me neither. Me neither.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be more like, but
Well,
we
I
love
mean,
you,
and to
Sylvester. That's why we make fun.
And to be fair, I mean, this character seems more or less nigh invincible. So, I mean, the armor is really just kind of statement making more than anything else.
Yeah.
Dude, that was another really fun thing that this one did. Like, his superpowers still had a drawback.
Yeah.
I did not expect it to be. In my head, it seems theoretical. Like,
Yeah.
obviously he's mad. There's a little bit of magic, but like he has this whole exhaust system that has to be maintained, or he'll explode.
You know, I think that's exactly I think that's how the writers' room pitch went down. Like, it was probably pitched not to be this serious movie, but they went in and they said, all right, old retired superhero, Sylvester Stallone, and get this, he has to recharge by eating ice cream.
Yeah. Like,
Boom, greenlit, done, sold. That is probably one of my favorite aspects of that was that he recharges by eating ice cream.
Well, no, it wasn't even eating ice cream. It was just water in general. He just had to diffuse the reactor that is his system. But he commented, like, that's what I loved about the ice cream bit was there's a very real system that needs to be cooled down, and it has multiple ways to achieve that cooling. It doesn't have to be this one kryptonite serum that fixes him. Instead, I just need something cold.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do a Ryan George. Yeah. I'm gonna have to do a Ryan George pitch meeting parody with that, where I'll be like, so you have a movie for me? Yeah, Sylvester Stallone's a retired superhero. Okay. And he recharges by eating ice cream. Done. And that's it. That's the video.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that was great. I loved the fact that they relied primarily on practical effects. It is a lost art, and they did a fantastic job.
Which is stupid that it's a lost art because
that's a Stallone requirement. I listened to an interview with Jason Statham about his
Expendables.
Expendables.
Yeah.
And Jason Statham was saying that like one of Stallone's mandatories forever is practical effects. Like, even if you're gonna overdo it, even if you're gonna like be a superhero, you should make this stuff still realistic. Like, I don't know how they did the car jumping scene where he like pulled it over, but I assume like there was an element of it was on a prop system. Like, it wasn't like they CGI'd a car for him to roll over. Instead, he just had assistance from unknown machines.
My suspicion would be that they probably anchored one side of the car and used rope pulleys on the other.
Yeah, the way I got it was very much like the car slingshotted him, even though it was supposed to be him.
Oh, that could be it too.
So I kind of got the vibe that like when he grabbed it, the car some form of something. But that's what's so cool is like as just coming from the child inside of me, I really feel like the fact that he really looked like a citizen while also doing heroic things, like the child in me is like, that's kind of what I always imagined a superhero would be, like half happy to be here, half I can't believe I'm here, half like I can take on everybody, but also there's a smart way to do it. So I'm not just gonna super punch everyone in one hit. I'm gonna build up, and then it really just, I don't know. It really felt like Stallone was being a child in a superhero's body rather than being an actor trying to be a cool superhero.
Yeah. I liked the young kid's story arc. The main kid's story arc. We see a kid who's kind of in a rough spot in his life, but he never lost that kind of childhood wonder at the fantastic. And, you know, the kid got to meet his hero as far as the kid was concerned. And I think that was an interesting piece on it too, where this kid never stopped believing. And I think that youthful optimism is kind of one of the hallmarks of a good superhero movie, right? Like you need a POV character, a character you can relate to that never stops being hopeful of that, because at the end of the day, that's the audience, right? We never stop being hopeful that, you know, one day Superman will show up and help us, right? So that piece was, I thought, really well done. That being said, too, I mean, for all the good that this kid is and has and whatnot, I mean, you know, he's not exactly, you know, following the law directly either, right? So I thought that mirrored the whole concept of the story really, really well. You know, we kept getting those same themes mirrored beautifully through every one of the characters that were following's like character arcs, right?
Yeah, that's actually, those are such good points, because I think that the kid really does show reality much better than like most kid actors and most like kids in stories have before. Because if you think about all the kids Superman meets, they're basically all very aware of the law, very aware of their place in the system, very aware of their abilities. Whereas this kid, he's very aware that the law only exists when a cop's around.
Yep.
He's very aware that money is more important than being a good person, because money is what actually pays for your apartment, and goodness is how you get more money easily, rather than like how you get quick money fast. And there's this whole idea that like, you know, we want our kids to be better, but in this movie it really shows that like, yeah, we want our kids to be better, but that mom was 100% incapable of teaching her child how to be better, because she had no time to spend with her child.
Yeah.
She was 100% working to barely afford the cheapest place in town, which was completely gang ridden. And like the main bully, which isn't the main bad guy, but the main bully to this kid is his neighbor. The only difference is like he was raised by other bullies, so he wasn't bullied as hard.
Yeah.
And that he really like shows why one kid fully doesn't care about the law at all, doesn't care about being the good guy. He's fully given in to the nemesis bad guy side. He believes in it because it's literally worked for him his whole life. He robs people and gets away with it. He gets vengeance on those that hurt him. And then you have this other kid who occasionally the bad guy criminals, they like him. Occasionally the bullies within the bad guy criminals will beat him up. And while he's still dreaming of the superhero returning and still dreaming of Samaritan coming in to save him and his family from this darkness, it really does him no good to pretend like everything's okay. Yeah. And Stallone's character taking the time to be like, yeah, being fair and honorable is the ultimate goal, but also being alive.
Yeah.
And so if that means you have to cheat in a street fight where you sucker punch somebody and run away, like, you survive.
That's it.
And it's better to just not get in street fights than to be down to, well, if I had sucker punched him, I would have won.
Yeah.
Like, it's better to put yourself in a position where you don't need to fight. But if you do need to fight, it's about winning. It has nothing to do with fair and honor, because fair and honor is for the referee.
Yep.
If there's no referee, you are the referee. Do you want to come out of there barely alive? Do you want to come out of there with broken limbs, or do you want to get out of there?
You want to get out of there
on your own, of your own volition.
Yep.
And this movie really took the time to show that, like, the reason why kids are corrupt, the reason why kids are becoming gangbangers, is because the only people with any free time are the gangbangers. Yep. The only people with any time to influence and motivate and teach and mentor are the gangbangers. Because teachers are working their second job so that they can afford supplies for their classrooms, because parents are working their 3 jobs so that they can afford the 1 apartment.
Yeah.
And mentors aren't walking the streets, they're working.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
it's super easy to be a good guy in paradise, right?
Yep.
It's super easy to be a hero when you don't have to, when you don't have to worry about where lunch is coming from, right? It's a lot harder to be a good guy in a very bad place. And I will definitely say kudo to the set dressers and the set designers in this, because they made that grittiness, this kind of a not Detroit, feel that way. Feel like a city on the verge of constant collapse. A environment on the, full of, humans struggling to meet their day-to-day needs, right? I think that's a fantastic job they did of displaying that well and making us feel like this could easily be a place in a city near where I know. And I thought that was a fantastic piece of work that they put together in that regard.
Yeah, I don't think they had ever really confirmed where the place was located, did they?
Granite City. I caught it.
So it, like, is an actual city?
It's not an actual city.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, because I mean I've heard of Granite Mountain, but yeah, and I think that was a good call, because the story isn't supposed to, humans in our tribalistic tendencies have some funny traditions, and like, it's especially hilarious in cities like Detroit, for example, where it's like, don't ever talk bad about Detroit. Now, pardon us while we go kill each other. And it's like, you say, of course, now I said that, I've got the mark of death on me. But it's just funny the way people rally behind that. And see, the point was not to make it New York or San Francisco or, BF Nowhere, Idaho. It was to make it city, generic place you've probably been or lived in at one point. Now, I personally am going to try to avoid ever living in a major city again, but I do.
You mean,
huh?
That it mirrored DC with Metropolis?
Sort of, but
Is
even
that
Metropolis.
Metropolitan city.
So, all right. So Arendi writes in. No kidding. Finding mentors in real life for anything is a pain in the ass. I had to teach myself beekeeping using YouTube, and I pulled it off only because I tend to obsessively research what I like. So that aspect is representative of reality. That's the other thing. This is a very realistic movie. Like, take the superhero element out, and you can think this was like happening right next door. And that's my point. Right, and that's my point. Is even though DC uses Metropolis is clearly a pseudo city for like Austin, Texas, and
closer to St. Louis, but
okay, yeah, and then Gotham is obviously New York or Chicago, and so this one was like, it takes place in a major city, but it's kind of just going to be bleak and dreary, and it doesn't have an actual location because, and that's just it. And John, I see your point. I agree with you. It's just, this works more in this show's benefit simply because, as I established earlier,
I think that's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't have a bunch of lore either.
Well, this is the dirty part of Chicago, the dirty part of New York, the dirty part of San Francisco, the dirty part of LA. It's just the dirty part of the city.
The dirty part of Oakland.
If you've ever been to a big city, Oakland, you know that they exactly. Like
the dirty part of any city, USA.
Any city. Well, any city. I mean, maybe Madrid, maybe most of China doesn't have similar issues. But like almost every other pretty European, Western European city, anything that is Western civilization city, this is the dirty city, like the dirty neighborhood. It doesn't even take the time to actually, like, there's the whole, cops are being bribed and some cops aren't. And they don't go into that. You don't meet the police chief. You don't meet the commissioner. You don't meet the good cops. You, like the few good apples. You don't meet all the bad apples. The cops aren't even the central problem. The people, like the whole story is it's about people doing their part.
The good apples don't typically patrol in those neighborhoods.
Well, it's not even just that. I mean, there's a plethora of books on that subject, but
Exactly.
the biggest thing is like the cops don't want to go where they're most likely going to get shot, right? And if there's an entire gang that is very willing to shoot, you're going to evade as much as possible. And then snitches get stitches. And if there's a well-established gang, nobody's going to snitch, so nobody's going to call the cops, so the cops aren't going to show up. And then you compound that over 10, 15, 20, 25 years, which is really what this story is about, is like the only people that were going to fight are dead now.
Yeah. And see,
Everybody else has abandoned this part of town, and the people that are fighting in it are not fighting for it.
Yeah, and that's just it.
Oh, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
You make a good point in that they don't put the emphasis on the cops, because I think Nolan's Dark Knight does a good enough job, showing that sort of corrupt side within police precincts, and that's a movie that focuses on that. That's why this movie is able to just focus on what it's trying to teach as morals and just keep the characters very zeroed in, like super zeroed in. Like this implies it has impact on a grander scale, but I like that they kind of bring it more localized, because again, it makes it more relatable to the situation, not just as a bystander, but like I could have been a Samaritan fanboy.
Yeah.
Well,
And I do like
just...
to. Well, okay. Let me grab this one.
That's your turn.
I like that this movie asks an interesting and important question. What would happen to a society that did have superheroes and supervillains, quote unquote, solving the problems, and then suddenly didn't? And how would people react to no longer having these gods walking among us? How would they fill in those gaps, or would they? Would everything just go to hell because there was nobody keeping us on the straight and narrow? I think it's an interesting discussion, and I definitely think it's one that is worthy of more, I would say, academic study, really, because I feel like that's a solid question to ask.
Well, and not just so much of a question about what would happen if they left, but like, why are we as people so willing to put all of our hope into one Samaritan? Why aren't we all standing up for good? Why aren't we all working together? Why are we allowed to be taken over by our bosses, taken advantage of by the system, and whenever somebody brings up being taken advantage of by the system, like, it's considered lazy, like, oh, you're blaming the system for your issues, except everybody knows that the system is broken. Everybody knows that it's taking advantage of people, and then when people say that they've been taken advantage of, they're lazy and the problem. And it's like, so we're both incapable of taking care of each other, and incapable of trusting the system, and incapable of empathizing with those being taken advantage of by the system. And it's like this, that's the big question, that's the big, like, point, if you will, to the whole movie, was why are you waiting for Samaritan to save you? Why are you waiting for Nemesis to scare you into appropriate response? Fan mail from Arende. I wonder if that's one of the reasons magic is so rare, preventing not only abuse but hyperdependence. Well, that's, to me, it's along the lines of fair mindset, but I'll let you.
Well, I was going to say that the best way the best definition I've ever found for magic is the generation of wonder in others. And I feel like when you hit a certain point in a society, people are not looking for wonder. they're looking for normalcy. They're looking for things to be normalized, even if the normal things are terrifying, right? Even if having normalcy means, well, we don't want, something wonderful to happen because that upsets the apple cart. When we can have everything be monotonous and regular with only a little bit of deviancy out of that. So I feel like we worry about that sort of thing because it, in a lot of ways, magic is kind of like the mind's version of issuing everybody a gun and just seeing how it plays out, right? There are people, like Petey, like Poyo, that are going to be responsible with those kind of tools, and they're going to use it as a tool. And then there are people out there that are going to be, I'm going to pull a Homer Simpson, and instead of using the light switch, I'm just going to shoot the light bulbs out of the, out of the sockets when I want to turn out the lights.
Right?
If
we weren't going to get dinged for copyright, I'd honestly pull that scene up right now and just play it, because that's such a good, I love that whole thing, and all the gun owners freaking out on him, like, what are you doing, you irresponsible dumbass?
Yeah, but I mean, but that's how it is, right? I mean, that's why every mystical tradition I've ever known is incredibly careful about who they teach to what, because they're worried that somebody will use it for stupid reasons as opposed to for important reasons. So I think the reason why you see magic being more rare as time goes on is because the people that are going to be extremely careful with it are a rare breed overall.
So this actually brings up an interesting point. And in my Star Wars fan fiction, the one where Earth is real, the Jedi set up a recruitment center on Earth, and they have to filter out the candidates. And of course, I make mention of the fact that if the guys come to like, I'm going to be a Sith Lord, and they're like, yeah, we'll call you back never. Bye. So yeah, no, that's definitely a good point to bring up. That it really is more about the fact that those who do have the knowledge, it's not because they want to keep it from you because you're not worthy. Well, that's part of it. But it's not that they want to do that maliciously. They want to do that because they don't want someone malicious to get a hold of it. And it's better to keep the knowledge under lock and key than to just put it out there for everybody. Now, I'm usually one of the types that comes from the fact of everyone should have a nuclear weapon for the sake of fairness, but I'm talking from the sense of sensible people. Obviously, I don't want a crazy psychopath that is, provided the system's not corrupt, documented psychopath to have access to a nuclear weapon. I mean, that's just not...
Well, I mean, if we are to believe what the science tells us, every president is a psychopath. The only
technically everybody is...
The only people capable of sustaining that level of scrutiny are those that lack the ability to empathize with others.
Okay, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this out there for the whole rest of the world to know. Okay, guys, contrary to popular assumption, the president cannot just fire off a nuclear weapon willy-nilly, okay? There's these people called the combatant commanders, very little known part of the military, and for good reason, that basically imagine the world, and I'm going to make this super quick. Imagine the world divided up into 11 quadrants. Each of those quadrants for the United States Armed Forces has a representative called a combatant commander. These are the guys that also have to authorize a launch. So it's not just, he grabs the football, pushes a button, guys. It's not that it's not that insecure.
No,
it's a process to fire a nuke.
And that's also a great way to bring up something that Russia's under the same standards, because Russia has also called in their football and activated their nukes in the commander, what'd you call him? Combatant commander? Their version of the combatant commander.
And you know what?
It's like, I don't think this is true. And it turns out the reason that like the one that I heard about that in relation to that, and it brings a sweet plug to our show on Thursday and the NAZI Bell that we'll be discussing. There's just certain anomalous events that can happen in atmosphere that basically resemble
And I can actually
an ICBM. And
yeah, and I can wrap this point up. I can wrap this point up actually tying it into Arendy's point and Corione's point, respectively. Okay, the fact that the president can't just willy-nilly fire a nuke should tell you all you need to know about the fact that there is a process in place to prevent the president from willy-nilly firing a nuke. So therefore, the power of nuclear weapons is in fact locked behind several safeguards. And yes, that's why magic would be so rare, is it's locked behind several safeguards to prevent someone from getting the power of somebody who could just launch a nuke. Does that sound right, Corione?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so now to get to Arendy's fan mail, or unless you want to make a point real quick, John.
Well, no, yeah, I'll jump on it and I'll caveat off. So I guess I'm a weird one. I've always been drawn to wonder ever since I've known about stuff like quantum mechanics and Edgar Cayce. Yeah, the thing about wonder that Corione is bringing is that at some point society stops caring. At some point society decides what nominal is, what average is, what standard regular behavior is. And I think that's the thing that like a lot of us struggle with, and it makes a lot of sense why it's hard to find mentors and it's hard to find like-minded people. It's the system itself. When I talk about the system, I mean the things that everybody is subjected to. So that's the roadway, that's policing in general. Like police officers patrol, they see things that aren't going down. They also have certain number of arrests that they're required to make so that they can justify their total budget. They have certain number, like if a city gets down to 0 crime, then some idiot in local or state Congress is going to say something along the lines of, well, if there's no crime, we don't need cops. And it's like, no, there's no crimes because the cops have found a way to get it to 0 or as close to 0 as possible. And if we cut that, we leave ourselves open to things we weren't open to.
Yeah, but I have a re-election coming up, okay? I need to justify why I should be paid more and the cops should not.
The only people that need to justify why they need to be reelected are the people that don't need to be reelected. Because like there's a lot of people that sit in office forever because the part that they're doing is exactly what we want them to do. Which in most cases, especially since the loss of a lot of like education, and that's also part of the system, is education, state, local, like city or federal, like what we learn is, you know, where we're gonna apply all of that information is to the future. Like when we go to college, there's all this like I remember in high school learning about how college professors are these super strict, super authoritarian dictators of their classes. No chewing gum, no phones in class, no music, none of that. Nah, dude, I literally told like my teachers the certain accommodations that I need for my personal disabilities, and my teachers were like, I don't care. None of those things would have ever asked me, like would have brought up any questions. And that was me taking college at 24 after being in the Marines, which is a whole other system of orders and policies and processes and regular. And then to come back to the grand regular, which is your community plus the internet. Like whatever your experience on in the internet is now added to your local community. Like there were times in Boise where like people were talking about climate change, and Boise is like 99% renewable energy. Like we've never once been dirty earth aside from our cars. Fan mail from Arendi. Movies like Samaritan, fantasy, sci-fi, mysticism, I can't help it. It causes a deep sense of curiosity and longing that is never completely satisfied. I have to know, experience, learn. Exactly, Arendi. So like you're struggling the independent individual life. That is the best life. The one that's like, I get the basics. I get the systems because that's what they are. They're just the basics. They're the procedures.
Quickly tack on, John. I just want to say too, I got a better education from this movie than I did anything in school. So, I don't need college. I have the internet.
I think that's one of the more beautiful things about movies today is they can generate the theories in theoretically possible ways. But that being said, like, if you ever want to get a job in quantum mechanics, you need the school because you got to learn the math. And that math starts at things like algebra. And then, from there. And
all
and
of
I
which
think
can
all,
be
like,
researched online.
I say
Yeah,
all of this
but
to say that, like, to me, one of the biggest problems with modern society, modern humanity, is that, like, just like in Samaritan is asking all of us, why does it take a superhero to get you to care about others? Like, the only time you care about running into a burning building is when you think about how a superhero did it. You don't think, oh, it's my duty to save. Instead, you think, like, oh shit, somebody should get in there and save them.
Yeah.
And that's the loss of wonder. That's the loss of societal care for the individual life. Is like, we have to care for them just like we care for ourselves, because as soon as we stop doing that, it becomes really easy to vilify anyone. And just like all of the bad 80s tropes, like, the villain isn't always a bad guy. They're just the most hated guy, the most blamed guy.
Yep.
And it's our duty to think that that character is impossible, that it is impossible to be a perfect Samaritan, and it is impossible to be a perfect nemesis. We are all always a little of both, and it's best to keep it 60-40. Like, know where your darkness is, but never let it decide your actions today.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, right? I mean, everybody has to make the decisions that, they're going to have to live with the next day, right? And the truth of the matter is, what somebody can live with versus what I can live with are going to be wildly different things, right? Even on this panel, right? I am sure there are things that I would be completely comfortable doing that, PD or Pollo Zapatos would be like, no, I can't do that, and vice versa, right? But I just kind of look at it as, at the end of the day, I got to be able to, when I get up in the morning, I got to be able to look myself in the mirror and not hate what I see. And if you can do that, you're probably living the best life you can, right? And that's all any one of us can try to do, is be that person that we want to see in the mirror. And if you can kind of follow that, and I feel like that's a lot of what this movie tries to teach as well, is if you can be that guy, if you can be the guy who can look himself in the mirror at the end of the day and be like, okay, I can live with this version of me, or this is the version of me I want to see, then you're probably okay. Of course, the thing of it is, the bad guy in this movie does not see himself as the bad guy. I don't think anybody who in history has been a bad guy sees themselves as the bad guy of the story, right? They probably see themselves as doing the job that they think they're supposed to do. And that's probably the most terrifying thing about humans, really. And also the most wondrous.
Randy writes in. Sorry, I got fan mail. The people who are hardest to love are the ones who need the most. That could apply to almost any bad guy. And I agree with that to a point. I agree with people like everybody. Please don't finish. I agree with applying that with everybody on this panel, and people in a similar or maybe worse circumstance. Common folk, workers, working class type folks, maybe even all the way up to upper middle class. That is where I. That is why I said almost. Oh, okay. I misunderstood your wording there. That's on me. One downside to text chat, you lose context very easily, but we try our best here. So yeah, and so I guess we're in agreement there, because I basically, the line starts to kind of come in harder and harder when it comes to when you start getting up to upper echelons, ultra rich and elitist types, and I think that's a different class of human that might not even be human.
Well, when we start getting into that, I mean, I'm reminded of the line, to whom much is given, much is also required. And I think if you remove the responsibility from the equation of that, that's where we wind up getting problems, right? I mean, if you're using, if you're using your wealth and authority to better the lives of your fellow human being, then I think we can all agree that is a good thing. But even if that is like, you know, John taking, you know, meals to somebody, that is still them doing what is within their means to do, right? Conversely, right, the guy who has all the money in the world and, you know, spends it on increasing human suffering throughout the globe, you know, that's not a good thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it even boils down to like macroism versus microcosm, right? Like, you know, just little acts of good are just as important as the big ones too.
Right, and that's why, to me, like the big general rule, my version of the golden rule, if you will, and it's know your enemy better than yourself. And when you do truly know your enemy better than yourself, then you can love them. And when you love someone, you can change them. And so it's not about loving the bad guy as they are. It's about loving the child that's inside of them. It's about taking what you said, Corian. It's about seeing the whole picture, because like there is the subjective good. Like, yeah, we absolutely wish our billionaires would just constantly report in that they donated all of their money, have no money now, and took care of Africa. All the kids are fed for the next 18 weeks, 52 weeks. They took care of it. They paid all the supply chain, logistics, everything. Now they have $0. Now they're netting. They can't afford their home. They can't afford their business. They can't afford dinner. Like that's like what people are saying when they say like just redistribute it. It's like, no.
Well, it's clearly they just need to work
why
harder
not,
and pull themselves up.
Why don't we
anyway?
Why don't we tell the people at the top, the bad guys, why don't we show them how to be good? Like, we don't have to love their past choices, but we can start being like, no, this is what we demand from you.
That
like,
question opens a huge door to a discussion we don't have time for, and we'd probably be better off saving.
To me, it's not so much. It's to sum it all up. Like, you don't have to think of them as not your enemy. But like part of warfare is knowing your enemy. But once you also have to acknowledge that once you know your enemy that well, once you know yourself that well, like you're open to the love.
Yeah. So Randy says, "Lil PD doing an Agent Smith with that Deagle." Yeah, I usually try I purposefully pull out the Desert Eagle because it is a very famous movie gun. Everybody who's watched any movie ever sees and recognizes the platform. But also, you know, when my friends kind of start reminding me of the people out there that are making people's lives hard and they have lots of money to make lives better, you know, the inner 1776 in me just starts to really intensify for some reason. Anyway, guys, we need to move on, so let's go around the table.
One more thing to add to that, Rope. Let's also admit, you've always wanted a Deagle since you were a kid, since you saw one. And now you're a guy with his own channel to the internet, and you get your favorite toy. Like, the childlike wonder needs to be admitted as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's all a balance.
Childlike satisfaction, I should say. Like, it's been one of Parker's biggest dreams in life, is to be able to do that.
All right, I'm gonna read Aaron's fan mail. Mr. Anderson, welcome back. We missed you. Best I could remember that scene.
It's pretty good.
Solid 7 for me. And I think we've covered why.
Yeah, solid 7 as well. You know,
A+.
I would, you know, be out building statues to this movie if I had the time.
Yeah, and I do want to say too. I totally
Philadelphia.
Yeah, I totally meant to make this. I totally meant to make this point. The other thing is too, the kid wasn't totally freaking irritable.
No,
I mean, how nice was that?
and actually, I would argue that
the shameless kid, but that kid's too old, so he's like another kid actor that reminds me of that shameless kid. But I really like this kid. He's good.
Yeah, I hope he's going places. I really want to see this kid do more.
Yeah, I think he absolutely can. Randy writes in a thumbs up, so yeah, you're welcome, man.
There you go.
Thumbs up to you, man. Thanks for being here as always. We do appreciate it. All right, so with that, it is time to move on to a quick word from our sponsor of tonight's stream, and that is, of course, my current place of work, CNC Cutlery. CNC Cutlery provides all of your supply needs for your Civil War reenactment, which of course includes a wide variety. I got the window up here. Wide variety of options for different clothing for whatever your regiment is, whether you're Buffalo Soldier, reenacting Confederate, or reenacting Union. We've got it all. But I wanted to bring attention to this particular page. If you go to the website, cccutlery.com, you can find museum, movie, theatrical, and unit credits. And of course, at the top, they have
post a link.
Huh? Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. I forgot, I didn't share the link. You can check out all of the different, so they feature first here any regiments that might be in your area that you might want to connect with if you're interested in participating in living history. And living history it's a huge world that I'm learning about that exists that I never knew was there. But one of the main reasons why we promote them on this channel is right here. The list is a little bit out of date. The movie on Hulu right now that just hit Hulu that released in April, Hostile Territory. We did provide costumes for that movie for the Civil War scenes. We've also provided for 1883, Fear of the Walking Dead. All these different credits for TV shows, movies. We've provided stuff for it, and we got a couple of big studio orders just this week. And so we're in it. And yes, I am trying to get some inside connection. Also, I totally realized I left the logo up the whole time because I forgot to switch modes. All right, here it is. The movies and TVs that you can find here. So yes, please check them out, cccutlery.com. Please tell them that the Writer Brothers sent you. And we're mostly just tracking that data for if this ad's working, but we might work in a discount program in the future once we maybe hit 1,000, 10,000 subs. We'll probably work something out. All right, so with that, it is now time to continue our Terminal List discussion. If you have not watched Terminal List on Amazon Prime, guess what? You still have time to catch up right now. This week we are discussing episode 5, so if you would like to continue our watch along, we're doing one episode a week. We might end up doubling up the last two in a couple of weeks. We'll see. Depends on what content's going about at the time, because we are also introducing our DS9 watch through, which we will talk about near the end of the stream. But this week was Terminal List episode 5. John, hit us with the recap.
I don't watch the episodes right now.
Orion, hit us with the recap.
I got you covered, guys. So, I actually wrote it out. I was so proud of myself this week.
Nice.
Katie's investigation leads to her question Mike, the former controlling owner of Nibelum, in whom Steve Horn has a controlling interest. He tells Kate that RD-4895 was made to bypass neural pathways to help eliminate trauma or PTSD in soldiers. The key to determining who had the approval of this experiment through Horn is in accounting, and who is responsible for giving the SEAL team brain tumors. Mike is shot and killed, and Katie survives because Reese saves her. Later, Reese kills Horn by injuring him with an EFT bomb and shooting him in the head. So we actually got some solid answers. Finally, answers as to what the heck is going on. I can't even tell you how much I danced for freaking joy when I found out what the heck was going on. That we had a solid piece of, journalism section in this time. It finally feels like the journalist character paid off a fair bit here. And we weren't just, like following her around in some sort of shaggy dog side story. So, yeah, I mean, and the concept of we developed this drug that, controls PTSD. That's kind of an interesting thing. And if such a thing could actually exist, look, my own father could probably really use it. Of course, the side effect of brain tumor is not so awesome, but, so now we've got reasons why they've been as careful and as informed as they have. So this is going somewhere now. We've gotten,
bro,
quantifiable stuff.
How do you feel realizing that you've had only honest narrators?
That is wild. That is so
Right?
wild to me.
Dude, I was waiting for you to get that. Like, because I knew
Yeah.
how hard that was for you. Like, you don't like knowing that, like, if it's unreliable or not.
Yeah, like, I mean, look, I'm the kind of guy that straight up, I hate seeing presents under the tree and not knowing what they are. Like, I'm that guy, right? Like, I am not a surprise person.
Yeah,
So,
no, I'm with you. That's why I'm the binger. Like,
yeah. Well, that's why it's been hard for me to not be like, okay, I'm going to take a weekend and just, like, watch this thing.
Well, I applaud your efforts and commend you for actually sticking to it, doing just the weekly formula. I mean, yeah, no, we didn't expect you to actually, you didn't have to stick to that, but we appreciate you anyway because it keeps all three of our perspectives all the more unique.
Well, I figure I owe it to the people who show up like a Rendy to give that perspective a chance, right? I mean,
well, unfortunately for both of you guys, like, you get in my shoes next week.
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, with how much you guys love the series and love the total lore. Like, for me, Star Trek is more of, like, a lesson in correct, not necessarily, like, something I seek out as much. Especially, like, with the new, like, I love modern CGI, so, like, that's something that, like, I seek out. And so, what, going backwards, it has always been painful. But it'll be fun to be in your guys' shoes, because, like, I don't know if I'll have that discipline. I really do appreciate you setting the standard, but, like,
we'll talk about it when we get to the DS9 segment.
But yeah. Well, so to all of that, I really
so
do.
So what you're trying to say is Corione is inspiring you to be disciplined with this watch through?
Well, not necessarily DS9, but, like, if I ever need to take on the role, so Corione set the standard. Like, that's how you do it, and it may suck, but also, like, seeing your face, seeing the relief, seeing how much, like, it's actually, like, made
worth
you
the
enjoy
wait,
it
huh?
more.
Yeah.
Because you suffered like that. I kind of want to feel what that feels like sometime.
Yeah.
So I'd be willing to do that, depending on the show, depending on how old it is, and depending on if I start watching it right after the stream, then I'm gonna binge till the next stream. But if I don't watch it until the day of the stream, I'll be more disciplined.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Deep Space Nine, I would say the CG lives, it holds up.
Okay,
to
all
me.
right.
Getting back
I've
to
got a
Terminal
tease DS9 segment planned for the last 15 minutes. It's okay.
Okay, but getting back to Terminal List, like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it felt good to know that we didn't have an unreliable narrator anywhere along the way. That, like, what we were getting was actually legit. And in a lot of ways, also kind of horrifying at the same time. It's like, oh my god, everyone's been telling the truth the whole time. Oh crap, everyone's been telling the truth the whole time, right? Like,
well, dude, you've got the tumor that's actually crippling this dude. He actually is being hunted by paid interest. Like, he didn't just piss off a gang on accident. His family didn't just piss off a gang on accident. Like, they were paid to take care of him, right? Yeah. And, like, my big question for you is, like, how do you feel now? Because that was something you asked last week, was, like, I really hope that the pharmaceutical angle isn't just some corporate capitalist greed.
Yeah, no, like, this actually works for me. This actually makes a lot of sense. It pays off in a way that, like, yeah, this would be something that could potentially happen if, a whole bunch of safeguards were basically ignored. And
well, my question though is like, because you could still sum it up. Like if you were to describe this series so far, since Navy SEAL gets screwed by corporate greed.
Yeah, I mean it does, right? But it's more nuanced than that, and I'm thankful for that. I also sat down and went, you know, one of the interesting things too is I don't think his deteriorating mental state is just because of the tumor. I think it also has a lot to do with, you know, if you've got a drug in your system controlling your PTSD and that drug is no longer in your system, that PTSD is probably coming back hard. And that's a piece of the puzzle there too, right? That, you know, he is dealing with this and he hasn't had to cope with this yet until just now. So I feel like that's an interesting little puzzle piece at the same time is, you know, oh wow, this is, you know, this drug was designed to control PTSD. Well, he's no longer on it anymore. Oh gods, right? And he's also dealing with the loss of his family without that drug in his system. That's crazy, right? Like suddenly a lot of stuff becomes justified. A lot of stuff makes sense in the order that it's going down and why he's, you know, why you feel like he could have been an unreliable narrator. If you didn't know that, no, the PTSD that he should be feeling, he wasn't for the first while, and now it's, you know, rushing back in the gaps, and it's sneaking up on him, that's a hell of a thing. And as somebody with with multiple people in their lives who do have combat-related PTSD and have it bad, this kind of thing has been something that I think a lot of us have, you know, it's a drug that if it were a thing and existed, we would have all loved to have had, right?
Well, let's remember that this drug isn't a cure, it's a preventative, is what it's supposed to be.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that, like, you cure PTSD, it's more that, like I want to say the show, this might be headcanon, but I want to say the show, like, went in and tried to explain that it was messing with the emotional plasty part of the brain. So, like, it was trying to degrade the connections to the level of trauma experienced, and that's mostly displayed in the first couple episodes with his memory of the events. But this show took such like I want to say it's like a deep thought or a deep angle, and they literally went into the idea that, like, because you mess with your, like, memory and your ability, like it's literally messing with their adaptation. Like Navy SEALs, tier 1 operators, especially the guys that have a lot of kills under them, like, they already have developed coping mechanisms, and they may not be right or they may not be good, but they exist. And this drug is directly debilitating the flexing of that muscle, and I think this show takes a lot of effort into displaying that, because I can't remember at what point it is, but I know that, like, one of the key memories we've been watching the whole time has been wrong for the most part. And when it's finally revealed how it, like, actually played out, it's way more beautiful, but then also just stabs you in the heart, because you're like, wow, a good father. And, like, his coping mechanism really truly was like a warrior, an honorable warrior. And that's why I think it's so great. Like, you're like, he's an unreliable narrator, but, like, to me watching it, I was always kind of like trusting him, because I know that, like, there's a way warriors talk, and when they're very direct, that's when they're being the most honest. When they're very, like, flamboyant, that's when they're adding credit. Well, and so watching you suffer through that, like, just either from, like, lack of experience or just whatever, like, the difference, because, like, I've read a lot of Navy SEAL books, so I kind of know
look,
how they talk.
Here's the thing, though. I thought this was a case of where the unreliable narrator thought everything they were seeing and experiencing was true. They weren't unreliable because they were spinning a yarn. They were unreliable because their mind was literally playing tricks on them. Okay.
Yeah.
That was more my unreliable
to me-
narrator piece.
I love how like actually deep it is for you, because like when you talk to normal people, that's not like usually what they like the level they get into. So like on that note, to me, like what made me believe his side was his like physical responses.
Right.
Like we watched him maintain professionalism till it was inappropriate, and that was something to me that was like credit to them. Like I knew that he wasn't what's the word, like he wasn't like visualizing it. He wasn't having
Like a
bouts,
flashback or anything.
not flashback, but the other one when you're like on drugs, hallucinating. He wasn't hallucinating.
No.
And that was something that like it really felt like they made apparent, and I just trusted him throughout. And yeah, again, I watched it all in a row,
Yeah.
so I didn't have any of that like discontinuity and time to question. But I like that, like for you, the unreliableness is in the depth of it. Like they actually tried to tell you that this is a hard to solve thriller, and you were like, yeah, it's actually pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, I guess the way I like to explain it is I've been in situations where people could reliably pass lie detector tests, but still did not have the actual truth. They had the truth from their point of view. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right,
it's
and
kind of like almost
that's-
like a Rashomon kind of thing, where it's you really only discover the truth by getting all the angles and putting the pieces together. Like, if that makes any sense.
Fan mail. Yeah, it totally makes sense. But did you read this fan mail from Arendi?
Oh, no.
PD's avatar could be mistaken with a typical fantasy dwarf. Love it.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
I love you, Arendi, for that, because like it's his Jedi character.
Arendi, 100%. I will tell you this: if you guys can get this channel to 1,000 subscribers, I will do everything in my power to get him to braid and fork his beard. Okay, I'm putting that out there right now. We will dwarfify PD if you guys get him to 1,000 subscribers.
4,000 watch hours, and we'll get him to do a jig.
There you go. I'll get him an axe, right?
Yes. So to your point, the fact that like it's a story told by one guy's experience, and then if we add in all the other parts about what he's shown us his experiences, like with the migraines, the problem sleeping, but like his training is still fully active. Like, he knows what he's doing when he's awake, but also his head is killing him.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really good representation of what mental suffering really looks like. Like, you can operate at the level that is your average, even when you're having your worst head day, even when you're having your worst mental day, you can still be average. But like, that doesn't mean you're having a good day. It means you're doing good enough to survive that day. And when you see it at a SEAL level, it kind of like,
well, yeah,
it shows what the true like, I'm gonna try too hard looks like.
Yeah.
So then you, a normal, me, a normal, we can be like, yeah, I'm not gonna also try to solve the world's problems while I have this headache.
Well, I mean, look, I guess this is the best way I can explain it, right? Like, and when we say, you know, the person's normal, like you can be like, you know, do your normal kind of stuff. Like, we're talking normal for the individual, right? Like, you know, I part of the IT I deals with a lot of radio stuff. And so understanding what kind of radio frequency strength you should be able to get at certain ranges from a tower and given stuff in place, I've got all that memorized and I can spout it off pretty much instantly. So even when I was at work having a migraine or just having a terrible day, if somebody came in and spouted me off the numbers, I could give you an answer right away. And it may look to everyone else like, wow, that's impressive. But to me, no, it's instinctual, right? It's automatic.
Safety mechanism. It's one of those things that you need to know.
Mhm.
And in case you're having a bad day,
Yep.
it's there.
Yep.
So without you, like, yeah, I get that.
Like, I'm willing to bet, like, and I mean, we see it with this character, like, even when, he's having migraines in the worst day, he still maintains proper trigger discipline, right? I mean, because it's ingrained, right? And kudos for the show making sure that happens.
Dude,
right?
There's this awesome quote, I can't run it off the top of my head, but to paraphrase, Jack Carr was saying that talking to Chris Pratt about the rules, Chris Pratt was basically like a student, like 100% giddy and excited to learn the rules from an expert. Like he was like, to me, the way I imagine it went down, because I was just like watching it off of Joe Rogan, and so you just see Jack Carr talking about it. But the way I imagine the whole event was like Keanu Reeves, the way he learned and prepared for John Wick. Like, he took really disciplined courses to be the actual best killer. And he went so far, like, back to the practical effects of Sly Stallone, like Keanu Reeves, he made sure that the bullet counts were real. The reloads were real. Like, he was exactly empty when that gun was empty. There was no fake shooting. And that, I feel like, is something that Chris Pratt took on here, was like, I'm exactly going to peek these corners. I'm exactly going to pop everything you're supposed to do, because I'm sitting with a tier 1 operator who's also a writer, who's also a producer.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Well, and
that's apparently like, that was the part of their dynamic, was like Chris Pratt was 100% excited.
I mean, you got to figure.
Oh,
awesome. Now you got to figure too that
Ohio Gazaimas?
Sorry?
Is that what she's trying to say? Is Glenda trying to say Ohio Gazaimas? And it comes out Ohio Gays?
Probably. Gozaimasu? Yeah. But yeah, you got to figure that if a tier 1 operator or former tier 1 operator is writing something like this, other tier 1 operators are going to be watching this, and anybody who's got a specialization in a skill is going to nitpick little pieces like that. Like, I cannot watch a sword fight scene in a movie without scoring it according to fencing rules. Like, I just can't, right? And in some ways it makes things better, and in some ways it makes things a lot worse. But when I see like terrible sword fighting in movies, it pulls me out of it. So I got to imagine it's very similar for a tier 1 operator, right? Like, someone who's a former Navy SEAL who's watching this is going to appreciate somebody showing proper trigger discipline, showing how to properly corner, showing how to properly breach, right? Like, these are going to be things that people appreciate.
Not even like the tier 3, 7, 9, 10, 15 tier, like all the Marines that literally sat on the range, anytime their finger looked like it might be near the trigger and they got hit for it, like, they're gonna be grateful that it looks like Chris Pratt maybe suffered that. Like, Chris isn't the Charlie Sheen of Navy SEALs. Chris Pratt looks like he may or may not have, did a weekend tour of Buds. Like, maybe just a weekend. But then again, like, Chris Pratt, when the way he bulked up for Guardians of the Galaxy, like, seems like that guy could maybe tough out. But I don't know if he wouldn't take it maybe a little bit longer. Hell Week might have killed him, but he seems like the kind of
dude.
guy
Hell Week might kill anybody.
Hell Week would definitely. I would be reading it. Hell. Like, I read enough. I read Chris Kyle's book, which I've also heard is a good one. But Lone Survivor by Marcus Luttrell, and he goes through the whole Buzz training, and it's. I'm like, yep, I would have rang that bell.
Yeah,
Crucible +2.
Yeah, look, the thing about Hell Week is, like, even like the hardest of hard chargers, if they're just having an off day during Hell Week, it potentially they could potentially be ringing that bell. Right?
But see, that's the thing. Like, that's what it's meant to do. That's where, like, that's what we're seeing in this show, is that the Navy SEALs, like, their bad days are meant to be toughed out.
Yep.
Something hurts, tough hits. You push and you keep pushing. And in the case of Marcus Luttrell, I want to say he got screwed out by shin splints and he was pissed. He was like, I don't have those. And they're like, dude, if you run one more mile, you will shatter your shins forever.
Yeah.
So he recovered the requisite, and then they let him go back to Hell Week day 1, and he was like day 5, I think, day 4 or 5, and he went back to 1 and he toughed it out. Like, that's what you need to be a SEAL, and that's the guy suffering this head trauma. And that's why I say, like, that's why I brought up earlier for him, like, my trust in him is like knowing all these books, knowing all these stories about Navy SEALs and who makes it, and who, according to Jack Carr, based off his discussions, based off the show, I watched it all in a row, like all of these combined to me was just like, no, I trust this guy. Everything he says is real. Yep. Without, like, and that's adding on, like, yeah, he's got a brain tumor. Yeah, his life sucks. Yeah, he's struggling, but like, he's got the honor of the honorable. He has the honor of where they came from, where he's been, and what he's done. And so to me, it just automatically was like, he's a reliable narrator in way over his head. And that was the story I was watching. Whereas for you, you're like, he's might not be in his head.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, having dealt with people who have had TBIs, right? They 100% legitimately believe what they're experiencing, right? As real, as genuine. I know a dude who's schizophrenic, and when he's having an off day, he 100% believes that ostrich is sitting on his bed and is staring him down.
Sorry, real quick, Corey, on just want to say obligatory like and subscribe remark.
Yeah. You know, like, he legitimately believes it, right? So, you know, when I'm saying an unreliable narrator, I'm not saying that the individual is telling, you know, like a fish tale or something like that, right? Like a fishing story. I'm talking, you know, he may not 100% be with it. So can we trust the information he's giving is genuine? That was the interesting part for me too, was that I was sitting there going like, I don't know if what this guy is saying is, you know, because there actually is a brain tumor, or if the brain tumor is a cover story to hide something else, right? Like, were they using that to say, oh, this guy can't be believed, and it was some sort of, you know, conspiracy there, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't know. And that was kind of the interesting part of it, because I'm one of those guys when I'm watching a show, is I like to break down, okay, this is exactly what we know, right? And I guess because I've watched enough sci-fi and fantasy to know, like, for example, the general rule of somebody isn't dead until we see the body in the ground, right? You know, I kind of take all of it that way. Like, facts are not in evidence until they can 100% be proven on screen as fact, right? So any ambiguity to me is completely open, and whether the character treats it as true or not is not necessarily make it true.
Well, see, that's why I love this. I thought this, like, I want to posthumously take credit for this because, like, we all discussed it and we all agreed that this might be a good way to do this series, you know, with a show that released in full on day 1. But, like, this is kind of how I imagined it going. Like, if we did do this standard, which you, Corian, you disciplined it. Parker, you definitely did. And then my laziness just benefited. I had already binged the show, so I was pitching it to you guys. And I just didn't want to read the book yet because I got all these other things to listen to. And then Corian was like, I'm going to actually watch it one episode at a time. And Parker was too, but he also just read the book through and through. So, like, I definitely can't take credit for this going this way, but I can take credit for this idea being as beautiful as it is because I was gonna be biased. Like,
Yeah.
I had been hearing about this production since Jack Carr first went on Joe Rogan and first talked about its inception, first talked about working with Chris Pratt. Then when he like said it was released, and then I binged the whole show right after that podcast. Like, I was already predetermined to follow a certain narrative that was going to be 100% biased. And Corione here is like, no, I'm a professional, objective observer, and I'm going to objectively observe, and I'm confused. And so, like, watching your confusion to me was just like all this satisfaction, like, yes, they did do it right, because I knew I was biased the whole time. I knew where my bias lay. And so to hear you being objective and actually enjoying it the way that it was intended to be enjoyed, it's like, oh, this is what's going to make DS9 fun, because I feel like that's you guys for DS9.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are me, and
Well,
me
Well,
enjoying it.
Well, I do think like Petey and I have like a very different watch through experience when it comes to Deep Space Nine. Because when I watch something, I pick up little pieces from the middle of nowhere. I also know all the behind the scenes production stuff. So I think that's what's going to make the difference here is I actually know what some of the discussions were in the writer's room behind the scenes.
Yeah. And then, all right. So real quick, this week episode for me, now that I have a chance to say it, I thought it was a nice change of pace. It didn't get boring. It was definitely a little more. It gave the illusion pretty well of some time had passed, and so I liked it for that. And that there was clearly a few, a couple of days, maybe a week or so before he took out Steve, and so I thought that was really well done, because that's the one thing I don't like about the movie The Martian. The Martian, which is a great book to read, please read it, and please support the author.
Yeah, Andy Weir is amazing.
Yeah, he is. The Martian, you feel the passage of time when you're reading it. The movie should not have been a movie. It should have been a premium TV series, miniseries, because it just feels so rushed and condensed. And I mean, I'm sorry, as a writer myself, there's only so much that 3 weeks later can convince your audience that it's been 3 weeks. You have to give the feelings gotta be there. And so that's what I didn't like about The Martian, was that the passage of time did not feel like, it just felt too compressed. Well, this show feels like a more realistic passage of time is taking place, and so I do like it for that pacing. You guys are praising the action and the realistic fight scenes, which is absolutely correct. I'm right there with you on that. I also just want to point out the pacing on this show has been very good from episode to episode. So,
Oh, dude, I think I've definitely inadvertently and indirectly been commenting on the pacing, because like when I describe watching Corione watch this, like I'm talking about all the compounding weeks, everything he says about like what's gonna happen next. Like I've just been sitting here waiting, excited about this moment.
That's like me when you're speculating on
that's the
DS9.
pacing. Like that's like every time we've come back, every time Corione has given his speculation, he has just ended all of my discussion, because I'm like, oh, I have all the answers. So it's really nice for it to finally pay off. Like there's more. It's not over. There's so much more fun to come, and so much more like how big this thing really is, and how much everything actually matters. But at the same time, like it's really nice to see you finally like satisfied, at least in knowing who's telling the truth and why everything's happening the way that it is.
Yeah. No, and that's helped. And when it comes to The Martian, I will say that I feel the book is probably one of the greatest books of all time. I thought the movie did the best it could with the time constraints it had.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with both of you here, because I totally felt the passage of time in The Martian. That movie was a slog.
Oh, okay.
It was rough. Like, and not because it's a bad movie. Like, it was actually really fun. I've watched it like 3 times. I really enjoy. Like, this is before our show. Like, I rewatch and binge, and I watch a lot of media. So like, The Martian to me, like when I say it's a slog, is like I watched The Martian after watching the first 2 seasons of For All Mankind.
Okay.
And combining those two really like made The Martian, it obviously like it's a hyper condensed For All Mankind, but like when you combine season 2 and The Martian, it is a much more understanding, like they're suffering so much in that loneliness, and that's 2 people in For All Mankind, or 3 people in For All Mankind, and 1 dude in The Martian. And then, you know, compile on everything I've learned about being stuck in solitary confinement, and it makes the slog make sense, and it also makes it more enjoyable. Like, if anything, you're kind of watching this dude's descent into madness, but he's also a hyper disciplined dude descending into madness, so it's slow. So that's why I disagree. I think the movie did very well in conveying that, but only because I have so much other things to compare it to.
Yeah, and I mean, here's what I would say. Like, they did cut one of my favorite scenes from the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did. But because the powder trap near the end of the book, the last big disaster he has to deal with, they cut. Which was one of my favorite like nightmare scenarios he runs into. But I mean, for me personally, like that movie holds a special place. In my day-to-day life, I deal with IT stuff. I literally deal with people come to me continuously with disasters, and I have to solve the little pieces of a problem to solve the big problem. And then at the end of the day, if I solve enough problems, I get to actually go home again. So I could 100% relate to this guy, right? I could relate to the out-of-the-box thinking, and I could relate to the sarcasm, because if you ever spend any time around a group of IT guys, we're all sarcastic a-holes like that all the time, right? And we're all making jokes like, you know, they will come to fear my botany powers. Like, that is a thing that will get said, only it'll be something weird, like they will come to fear my sequel powers or something like that. It, you know, we do that. So to me, it was fantastic, right? And the fact that NASA scientists were sitting there going like, yeah, this is how it would go down. Where did Andy get his information from? And Andy was like, well, I just kind of did what I thought would make more sense. I didn't actually have any inside source inside NASA. I was like, okay, that's great, right? Like the fact that a civilian can figure it all out, perfect.
But that to me, I think, is like the beauty of sci-fi writing. Is like so many sci-fi authors seem to understand the general idea.
Yeah.
Like they can see the baseball, but they have no idea what makes up the baseball. That you see their work, like especially like when it comes to like anti-gravity propulsion and stuff like that. Like sci-fi is the place for that, but also like part of being a good writer is spending time making the mundane fun. And if you're a sci-fi writer, part of the mundane is the hyper theoretical. Like if I'm on Mars and I don't have oxygen and this happened, and then it's like, well, let me write what I would do if I was stuck in that situation and I was this character.
And dragging it back to Terminal List, I mean, you know,
our
writer. Oh, hold on. Our writer doesn't, you know, I'm assuming has never actually had to deal with, you know, spec ops work on American soil, but he did he put in the thought process to go, if a situation like this went down, how would this guy deal with it? Who would he turn to for help? What allies would he shake loose and get to make this work?
What other super action. Like, this to me is what makes AVP Requiem and just Alien vs. Predator in general just such a, like, POS.
Yeah.
Is like, this dude proved that you can hide.
Yeah.
Like, our surveillance systems are great, but the desert, the forest, the jungle, that shit is dense. Like, it's hard to survive, but if you're already trained to be an independent operator, and now your only goal is surviving, like, oh, thanks for not also like, and that's what this showed. Like, this dude is just goofing with them. And then this might be a spoiler for episode 6.
All right, then don't say.
But did the police make contact with him?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I will say this, though, you know, like, we are talking about fantastic writers, and we do happen to have a published fantastic writer on the panel who has written an absolutely fantastic book that you should check out.
Yeah, you know, you're talking about, you know, what are you going to do in the worst case scenario? What are you going to do when a hostile alien race attacks one you've never talked to before, and you're now on the run from said hostile alien race, and you don't have any communications? How does that play out?
It's like deep sea diving.
Yeah.
And
Also,
sailing
I'm
at
excited
the
to
same time.
I'm excited to plug it because the first. Oh, sorry, I got some on the ground here that's stuck in my foot. The first I have pinned the first chapter of the first draft of the sequel, and I have already started chapter 2. So I'm committing to 1 sentence a day at minimum. Of course, usually that turns into several. And I'm ready. I'm buckling down. I'm getting the sequel done because I want to get that series out there, and I want to share my ideas with you guys. And I'm excited to do that. That's part of the reason we're doing this show, is so that we can share ideas and promote work. And as John has firmly on display down below, restoring respect in today's scores. Gentlemen, I'm looking forward to episode 6. But also accompanying episode 6 on September 6th. That worked out fun and nicely. Is, of course, the beginning of our Star Trek Deep Space Nine watch through. Guys, if you've never watched Deep Space Nine, or it's been a while, or maybe you just freshly watched it, we would like you all to join us starting next week. Now, we're going to try and put out a few days in advance, or a few days, well, probably the Wednesday or Thursday after the show. What episodes we're going to be doing which week, because we really do want to burn through season 1 and 2, not like so fat. Here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to, Corion and I are probably going to talk extensively behind the scenes, and we're going to figure out what episodes are worth a full hour's attention and which ones are probably worth 10 to 15 minutes. And season 1 and 2, there's a couple of those, and by a couple, there's a lot. But it's also a 24-episode series, except for season 1, which is only 13 episodes. So that is where we're going. That is what we're going to be starting. And so each week we'll try to put out. And then once we hit about season 3, it's probably going to be 1 to 2 episodes a week from then on out.
Well, here's a pitch idea. Race me.
What?
I challenge all of our audience to try and beat me to the end of season 2 by September 6th. I can do it.
Okay.
I've done it.
I can accept that. If you want to binge season 1 and 2, I can get on board with that.
Just don't try to
I'm
do
not
it for
saying I
season
want to.
3.
I was just totally, this is a promotional. Let's start a challenge.
I mean, if we get enough interest, we can see where
1
next
and
week
2
stays. By next week? No.
week.
By the end of September.
We can finish it by the end of next week.
Well,
I will finish all 48 episodes.
yeah, we kind of need you to be focused
Right.
on episode 1, though, to start. And then from there, it'll be easier to binge a bunch from that. I mean, because like I said, but there's actually a couple episodes, especially in season 1, like Duet is hands down one of the best Star Trek episodes ever made.
So I said race me.
Yeah,
This
there
is
are a few
a
episodes
challenge
that
to our
were
audience.
really good.
If I don't finish, like, that means you beat me.
I think you're setting yourself up. Well, you're just talking about binging. No, I think you should. I could probably. I see what you're trying to do, but I can't advise
Dude,
you.
this is
It's an episodic show still. It's not as continuous as most other shows these days.
I am aware. I got stuck on TNG like season 4 or 5.
You didn't finish TNG?
No, dude.
Okay, how about that? How about you race from where you're at to TNG to the end of TNG before starting DS9?
And to be honest, you're cheating yourself of season 7 of TNG, which I would argue is probably up there for the top tier quality of Star Trek.
I agree.
See, that's the whole reason, like, why I'm offering this binge is like, let me catch up to the good seasons, so like we don't have to, because you guys keep talking about how the first couple are not as great.
We're still talking about them.
I'm on.
Yeah, and you gotta understand
we don't want to burn
some
through
of those...
season 1 and 2 in a week. We actually do intend to take it out, and some of them are really good.
Season 4,
season 1 and 2 set
TNG.
Okay.
Yeah, like
that's the race from season 4 25 to season 7 26.
Yeah, and like I will say this, season 1 and 2 of Deep Space Nine, while they are not necessarily as exciting, some of the episodes cover some super important stuff that comes up later.
Exactly.
Like the introduction of Kai Wynn, or as I lovingly refer to her as Space Karen. Because she's 100% Space Karen.
Huh?
I binged through Terminal List, and my only hiccup has been like trying not to say more than what happened in the episode we're discussing.
Yes,
so
but we also discussed how Corione's been able to.
What happens when I binge? Like I pay way too much attention.
Yeah. All right, we got fan mail from.
I do still pay attention when I binge.
We got fan mail from Glenda. Love Deep Space Nine. DS9 is the new Vegas of the Star Trek franchise. LOL.
Yeah.
And I adore Louise Fletcher. I have heard nothing but good things about Louise Fletcher at conventions. She is apparently one of the nicest, most like she'll actually have conversations with fans and entertain theory. Like she is not. She is the opposite for character. So, but yeah, John. Yeah, you know what? We need to clear the air. Carry on. We need to clear the air regarding season 1 and 2. Okay, when we say we want to get through season 1 and 2, it's really because it is feel a little dry. But the thing is, a lot of those topics that are covered we are gonna be able to fill content. Now, some nights we might fill 3 or 4 episodes because it's just some of them are one-offs and they're like, eh. But then there's other ones, especially when we get to the first series arc, which I believe is the Circle. That one, and that's where we start to build more arcs. We have fan mail from Arendi. To quote Q at the end of season 7, that is the exploration that awaits you. Not charting stars and nebula, but to explore the unknown possibilities of existence. See you out there. Yes, and that's why, John, you really shouldn't binge.
This is a fine, like, honestly, Deep Space Nine is the fine wine of the Star Trek franchise. You know, when you start, it's not that great, but as it ages, it gets so much better.
That is, 100% concur with that.
You know, and I will say, like, even some of the episodes where we're like, they're kind of one-offs, there's little B-plot points that come up later in the series that when you watch it and you go, wait a minute, this is actually super important for later. Like, there are, without giving too much away, there are pieces that are covered about the Bajoran religion that become critically important later that you just almost ignore because you don't think it matters or it doesn't matter to the plot of the episode. But later on, it becomes so critically important to understand this component of their culture.
I think I can better illustrate my route to binging. So, like, the way that I watch anything, especially as established as Star Trek, like, the fact that people are learning Klingon means that, like, A, the show does enough to display its importance, and B, like, they wrote enough to make it seem more and more plausible. And I think that, like, the way, I mean, even the way I watch Star Trek Next Generation, like the Q stuff, to me, Q has always been a problem because, like, he doubts Picard's understanding of existence. While Picard is limited to charting the stars and nebulas, he absolutely focuses on the unknown possibilities of existence. Like, Picard is one of the most humanist and experientialist captains of the Star Trek verse. Like, whereas Picard is about experiencing adventure and being, you know, the captain of a starship, you know, a sailor among the stars. That's so sick. But Picard is like, I'm going to ponder the human existence while simultaneously sailing the stars. And so, like, for me, the deeper meanings and all of this, like, this is all to say that, like, I've been well aware that every part of Star Trek matters. I watch it because, like, that's what I mean when I say that it's one of those shows that, like, is the standard. Like, if you're gonna write anything sci-fi and you don't know the intricacies that Star Trek applied in a time when intricacy was considered too much for the audience to be capable of perceiving, then, like, you're not paying attention to world building. Hashtag Arende and his builder world. World building is, yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's my fetish. That's literally what I've been working on for the past 3 years.
I would argue
worlds,
that
but
the entire series of Next Generation really boils down to Q is attempting to mentor Picard because Picard is a human that has finally gotten to the point that he is worthy of the attention of the divine. And Q in and of itself is a trickster deity.
Explain it any further.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm just gonna say
I'm gonna enjoy this week.
I'm gonna enjoy the rest of TNG.
425 TNG.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you a food analogy to consider when getting ready to ingest Deep Space Nine. Okay,
No.
Deep Space Nine. Imagine paying $500 for a prime rib. Okay, now obviously one day we hope to be able to do that, but that's a bit much for me. But imagine a $500 prime, the best prime rib in the entire world. And, okay, are you going to inhale that thing? You might want to inhale it. It might be good that you want to gobble that thing up in 2 seconds. No. You're going to get a nice bottle of red wine, or white if you're into that, or red. Or, excuse me, rosé. And you're going to have your perfect selection top shelf bottle of wine. You're going to get your whether it's Béarnaise sauce or horseradish, whatever this particular slab of meat's going to go best with. You're going to slowly spread that out as you smell the aromas coming off your steak. You're going to take that first bite, and while you're going to want to eat the rest of it in like the span of 3 seconds, you're also going to realize you paid $500 for this prime rib. You're going to go slow. You're going to take your time and cut each piece. It's going to sit there. It's going to melt in your mouth. And then by the end, you're going to be glad that you didn't eat it all at once. That's the best. I can't stop you from binging, obviously. However, that's the best way I can describe DS9, is take it like a nice, expensive prime rib. Glinda writes in, yes, I'm a huge fan of prime rib.
I have a problem. I am exactly like Patrick from that SpongeBob episode where they all get lost and he just turns into a vacuum. All the sausages. That's 100% me.
Okay.
It's how I
top shelf
never
whiskey.
Get to eat again. Dude,
$5,000 bottle of whiskey.
Proper 12. Dude, like, so for me it goes Jameson, proper 12. And that's where it ends. I don't.
Look, you gotta try that
I'm not
Pappy.
A materialist. I'm a problem, dude. Like, I'm the guy that does not, like, if I do buy a $500 steak, it's because everybody else ordered $1,000 steak.
All right. We are down to the last 2 minutes. Unfortunately, we don't have time for plugs, but we will get those. Well, real quick, if you are looking for a Star Trek original series watch through, Anti-Derivative Jill hosts a stream every week doing TOS. I think she actually did one today, if I'm not mistaken. Or they're doing theirs tomorrow. I don't know. They don't see. Either way, check her out. She's really good, very knowledgeable. She's also, like John, very new to Star Trek, actually, in just recent, I think, in the last 10 years. And we also, let's see, quickly, Rende says, I don't drink alcohol, can't stand it. Hey, sorry, couldn't help poking fun at your analogy. That's perfectly fine. We are all about ball busting in this community.
Yeah, and hey, look, man, I will, Randy, I will say this. Look, not everyone needs to drink, or not everyone wants to, and that's totally fine, man. You know, you do you get the enjoyment from life where you want it. You know, I tend to enjoy a little bit of the drink every once in a while, but I'm not a heavy drinker. Like, I'm not the kind of guy who will sit down and you know, drop a huge amount of money on a bottle of bourbon and like down it in a night, right? Like, if I get a decent bottle of booze, it usually sits for like 3 or 4 years, and you know, little shots here and there.
Yeah, and I do want to say thank you guys to all 70 subscribers, to everyone watching right now, listening to the replay later, or you know, listening wherever you listen to our podcast. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot. Please, we do appreciate. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual good stuff. It helps us to grow. We want to keep growing. We want to be able to do this full time and bring you guys more content. Like, I love doing this. I love having these discussions with everybody that's on our panel, and I love talking to you guys in the chat. So please help keep us grow, and we'll keep bringing good discussions. So like I said, next week, Deep Space Nine watch through. Feel free to watch along. It's going to just be the emissary, and then we'll have we'll figure out the rest of the episodes to go along each week.
Yep.
My name's Peter York with the Ryder Brothers. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.